Hello and welcome to this episode of Antique Camera Wars. Today we have a really big camera. In fact, to help you understand and appreciate just how large this camera is, here is a Lego person. If you watched my last video, you'll recognise this camera here. Which camera do you think was built first? This one or this one? Before you answer that, there's a couple of things we can look at. The materials on the exterior, maybe the condition, notice the damage here. We could have a look at the back of the camera as well, see if there are any clues. No. Both of these cameras are made by Kodak, so you will notice some similarities. Unfortunately, this camera doesn't give us any clues, so we're going to have to open it up. We're going to put this one out the way and focus on this absolute beast. This camera is very fragile, and I bought it about a year ago. As with the last camera, this one has a serial number on this silver foot, and the number is 5545. Just look at that. Isn't that amazing? This really is an amazing camera. A couple of quick things before we open it up properly. We have our controller for the shutter speed, time, bulb, 100th of a second, 25th of a second, 5th of a second, half a second and 1 second. We can see it's made by Kodak. It was patented, a bit like copyright, in 1907. That's nearly 113 years ago. Or if you're watching this after tomorrow, that's over 113 years ago. Some other things I can notice. This was made by the Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, New York, USA. So this camera has come from America, making it an export. There are two tabs that I push together. These allow me to extend the bellows and set the camera up ready to take photos. I'll show you that again. So the bellows are compressed, the camera is ready to be stored, and we can extend them. Before we continue, I'd just like to show you these two things. Can you guess what this is? It's a small glass circle and it has a bubble. What do you think that does? Notice how the bubble displaces the liquid as I move the camera. It's a spirit level, a bit like a builder might use. It allows us to get the camera in a straight and level position ready to take our photo. That's really useful. The designers really thought carefully about this camera. We've also got this very unusual Gothic styled logo. It says Kodak in very old fashioned writing. And if I lift that, we have our viewfinder. Boo! In fact, another very exciting thing is if I lift this, we can see our mirror. Look, it's that mirror at 45 degrees that allows us to see, in a way that's similar to a periscope on a submarine. So the light, entering through this front lens, hits the mirror and is reflected up into this lens here, allowing us to see where we are pointing the camera and allow us to compose or set up our image. At the moment, the camera is set up to take photos in a portrait orientation. If we turn the camera 90 degrees and swivel the viewfinder, we can now take photos in a landscape orientation. We can even attach this camera to a tripod and here as well on the base. I'm actually in the middle of repairing this camera, So there are several pieces missing. There are also some parts that I've removed and other areas that need cleaning. I'll show you some of those pieces now. This is the lever used to select the aperture. That controls the opening that allows the light in. The wider the opening, the more light. The narrower the opening, the less light. More light means less of your image is in focus. So maybe a dog or a flower is in focus, but everything in the background is blurred. A narrow aperture allows you to get everything in focus, which is great for a landscape. A piece of leather from the outside of the camera. These are the numbers that go with the aperture control. This camera would have had aperture settings of f-stop 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 and a whopping 128. 4 being the widest, 128 being the most narrow. A really small spring, but I can't remember where it goes. And then this. This lever would have connected to this wire here. It acts as a remote control for the camera. So when you push this down, that opens up the shutter in here. Because it's spring powered, when I take my finger off, it would push back up and the shutter would close again. So this would allow me to control how long and when I took my photo. I can also do it here with this switch. What I'll do is put a light behind so that you can see that work. At the end, I'll show you some images of what it looks like inside the lens mechanism. The last thing we're going to do with this camera is open it up from the back. We can also have a small red viewing window for allowing us to read the symbols or numbers on the back of the film. That tells you how many photos you've taken and how many photos you have left. Remember, because you're using film, you can only take a limited number of photos. If I pull these two tabs in, I can carefully remove the back. We have some information on the back that helps us date this camera. The latest date on here is 1910, which means it was at least made after or during 1910. I've used the serial number that was on the foot that I showed you at the start, and I can confirm this camera is older or was made before 1912. We are looking here at a camera that was made between 1910 and 1912. So possibly 2 years before the Titanic sunk on the 15th of April 1912. Okay, that really is an old camera. Okay, we have the model name here. So if you wish to look this camera up, it is the 3A folding pocket Kodak, model B5. We can see the bellows neatly folded here. The large lens or glass element that allows the light to be projected onto the film, which would run across the back of the camera and be connected to this wooden, yes wooden, spool. Unfortunately I don't have the correct type of film, but to give you an idea of the size of this film, here's some 35mm film that I might have shown you at school. There are a couple of other tricks we can do with this camera. We can adjust the height or elevation of the front lens. We can also tilt and shift the lens. this can create some very artistic results. I wonder if there were any of these cameras in people's luggage on the Titanic, or whether people took photos of the Titanic using a camera like this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Mr. Solomon, welcome to his class. Today you're going to learn some photography, not economic geography. Take a seat. Make sure your work is not incomplete. Before you go in class, make sure your shoes are neat, just like Mr. Solomon's feet.